Hi, my name is Borys, and in this video I'm going to show you the basics of Ableton's Piano Roll. We'll get started with the basic controls, we'll go over quantizing and some fundamental editing features. After today's video you should be able to write MIDI patterns yourself easily. Before we get into the video, if you like what we are doing on this channel, make sure to subscribe. We've got more content about Ableton coming up. If you'd like to learn Live 12 with all the foundations of music production, check out our Beginner to Advanced Live 12 Start to Finish course, and make sure to also check out the Everything Bundle Collector's Edition, which includes all of the courses, sound packs and project files in our store. To see all of that, check the links in the video description. Alright, so let's get started. We have quite a simple loop loaded up here, just a kick drum, and we have also a bass track and a pad. This is a fragment of one of the tracks in our Ableton Live beginners course, and there's also a whole bunch of other tracks here, but for now let's just listen to this kick, bass and pad. Alright, we have some more drums here. Let me just preview what else is in the project. Yeah, but the core of the track is all in these three tracks at the top. Let's quickly go over how to actually write simple patterns in Ableton, because you might get started just with a basic empty MIDI track. Of course, adding MIDI tracks is just right-clicking and going to Insert MIDI Track. You can just select an area on the timeline and right-click and go to Insert Empty MIDI Clip, and it just appears. Right now we don't have anything on our MIDI track. Maybe I'm just going to take some instrument, like maybe I'll just get an instrument rack and I'll search for a guitar. Alright, so this simple guitar could work. I'm using my QWERTY keyboard as a MIDI controller, so if I arm the track now and if computer MIDI keyboard is enabled, I can just play something. Alright, so we have a very simple guitar loaded up. So let me just quickly explain how you can write notes in Ableton. All you need to do really is to just double click anywhere and MIDI notes just appear. Then you can click on these notes, extend them, move them around, and you can also enable or disable the preview. So if I now move around this note or I just click on it, we don't hear the guitar, but if I enable the preview, we just hear every note as we are adding them. Let me just delete all of this, and let's also discuss one important thing at the start, which is scales. And in Ableton 12, we have sort of global scales. So you can actually choose your scale over here. So you just select, for example, let's say C minor, and it automatically gets applied to this MIDI clip. You can also change it manually over here. And then you can see that our scale is sort of highlighted on these piano keys to the left. If you'd like to highlight the scale, you can also click Highlight Scale. Now we have highlighted in purple all of the scale notes, and then we can remove all of the notes that don't belong to our scale by just clicking the scale button. And now whatever we draw in will be in the scale. So let's actually check out what the scale is. So we just have the simple C minor scale. Let's just stay here. We also need to discuss how to zoom in and out in the clip view, because let's say we've added this pattern, but we want to zoom in this area. Basically, zooming is done either in this part where we have the timeline sort of, or in this part to the left of our keys. If we, for example, click on this area, hold the mouse and drag the mouse down on Windows, we just zoom in to this fragment in time. If we move the mouse up, then we zoom back out. I believe on Mac it's the reverse. And if we click this area to the left of the piano keys, we can zoom in and out with left and right. We can zoom out, for example, by dragging the mouse to the left, and then zoom back in by dragging the mouse to the right. And then when you zoom in actually on a certain part of the timeline, you can move your view sort of to the left or to the right by just clicking any point on the timeline and moving left, moving right. And then same applies to the keys themselves. If we, for example, have this view, we can move up and down, and this just moves our piano keyboard as well. So for instance, if we wanted to add a low note, we can just do this. Okay, so let's move back out. So you probably also noticed that all the notes that we're adding by default, these are very short. That's because we have quite a narrow grid. So the grid is defined by the vertical lines. So the narrower our grid, the shorter are going to be the notes that we add. You can check out the grid settings if you right click anywhere in the clip view. And here, for example, we have a 16th note grid. If we, for example, change to half of a bar, now you can see that all of our notes are going to be half of a bar. Let's say we wanted to have quarter notes. You can also do this. Let's say we wanted to have really short notes. This can also be done. And the last thing I want to get started with is the draw mode. So double clicking could be fine for less elaborate patterns, but if you are going to write a lot of MIDI, you probably would like to switch to just clicking once on a cell sort of and have your note in there. So it's really easy to change that. You just click B, or you click on this little draw sort of icon, and then you can see that your mouse changes into a pencil and you just can add notes by clicking only once. Of course, then you can also extend them as you wish. That would be the very brief introduction. Let me just remove this entire MIDI track and let's take a look at our track. So here we have a kick drum playing. And that's probably one of the first things that you're going to be adding to your track. So for instance, let's just select one bar, right click, insert empty MIDI clip. And we can also choose quarter notes because we want to play a 4 to the floor pattern. We can just enable draw mode and add 4 C3 notes, which basically means that the kick is going to play at the default pitch. If we were to play like a higher note, it would be pitched up. If we were to play a lower note than C3, it would be pitched down. Here's what this sounds like now. And we've just added a very simple 4 to the floor pattern. And now also what you can notice is that we have the loop enabled by default. If we extend this clip, we get a longer 4 to the floor pattern, and it loops every bar. And you can actually see when it loops over here. If you take a closer look, you have a little line here indicating that another repetition of the loop is starting. And so you can just extend this even over your entire track. So it's a very simple way of making basic drums. Another cool thing I wanted to show you is that you can actually deactivate notes without deleting them. Usually you would just click on a note, just press backspace or delete, and you remove notes. But if we, for example, wanted to temporarily disable this note, you can just press 0 and this note kind of turns transparent. It doesn't play, but we can then easily enable it back by clicking on it and pressing 0 again. And if we wanted to preview this note, for instance, you just click on this headphones button and click on some of these notes. This would be a higher note. This would be a lower note. Yeah, so writing drums is quite easy. For instance, if we were to make a clap, it would probably be every other quarter note. If we were to make hi-hats, we would probably just need to change our grid to 16th notes, and then we can draw in shorter notes like this. You can also, of course, copy and paste. For example, if we select an area, you can click Ctrl or Command and C. For example, you click on this area, you want to paste this note, you click Ctrl or Command and V. And you can also duplicate with Ctrl and D or Command and D. Okay, so that would be a very basic introduction to writing MIDI for drum patterns. We just have a 4 to the floor kick drum going on here. Let me open up this bass clip. We have many more notes going on here. So let's say we wanted to draw a similar pattern. We can just click on a cell and drag your mouse right. It can be quite tricky to actually hold on to the same cell if you don't have an important setting enabled. So let me just go into settings with Control and comma or Command and comma. And in the first tab, you just need to find Draw MIDI Notes with Pitch Lock if you have this enabled. If you have this enabled, you can write a line of notes at the same pitch without having to worry about your up and down position of the mouse. But if you have this off, then you can draw in notes like this. So I really like this setting. I'm gonna have it on, and we have an A sharp right now. What if we wanted to make this clip longer? As you can see, we have quite a long clip over here. So we can just change the length. It's all over here. So you can, for instance, click on this cell, type in 2, and it's twice as long. So it's 2 bars now. You can also drag this up and down, and you can see that the loop brace at the top changes. So let's say we wanted to make this clip longer. So let's disable the loop for now. You can see that we have a start marker. So the start marker determines where we start our clip. And we also have an end marker here, which determines where we end our clip. So you can see that the end marker and the start markers, these all respond to this view right here. So if we click on the end marker area and we go, for example, press the up arrow, it now doubled the length of our clip. You can also see in the timeline that our clip got twice as long. We now could add a different note over here. But what if we wanted to loop a certain area? We can just enable loop, and we have something called a loop brace. Let me just show the clip once again. This loop brace allows you to loop only a certain section of the clip or the entire clip. So by default, when you drag, it also drags the end marker, but actually in the loop mode, the end marker doesn't change anything. As you can see, it's grayed out, but the start marker actually matters. So right now we have this kind of pattern that loops. So we have 3 bars, and then every 3 bars we repeat. What if we, for example, wanted to start our clip at 2 instead of at 1? We could then move the start marker over here. So as you can see, it now starts with this section, plays towards the end of the clip, and then loops back at 1 over here. Okay, but that's a bit more of an advanced technique. Let's just get back to this area. And if you don't want to just drag your loop brace manually every time, you can just select an area and press a very useful shortcut, which is Control or Command and L. And now if we zoom in, we just have this section. Also in our MIDI pattern, you can probably notice that all the notes are shorter, and we didn't actually need to just go in and make every single note shorter. You can just select everything and you can sort of bulk edit. So you can just drag the end of one MIDI note and it shortens everything. The same with it the other way around. And we can also move around an entire pack of notes, and it's a nice way of editing as well. Now let's take a look at the pad. We have a more complex pattern going on. Let's just play it. Alright, so it's a bit more of a complex chord pattern, and we can enable our scale and fold to it. We are on the F major scale, and as you can see now, we have some clusters of notes, which makes it elaborate sounding. But I also wanted to show you how you can easily change octaves. So an octave is just 12 semitones or 8 steps in the scale. You can easily shift octaves. For instance, if we wanted to take this F note and move it up an octave, we just hold Shift and press the up arrow, and we went from F4 to F5. Similarly, for instance, if we wanted to take this G down an octave, we can take it to G1 and back to G2 with Shift and up and down arrows. We can also join chords in Ableton 12 in quite an interesting way. So for instance, let's say we add an F chord. So if you have scale awareness enabled over here, and maybe you have also the scale enabled over here, so we have just folded to the scale, you can select a certain note and choose the add interval feature. So with scale awareness, it turns from semitones, so ST, to SD, which is scale degrees. And if we just, for instance, click on this arrow and just hold the up arrow, we just get the first step degree higher. And a cool thing about forming chords is that usually the notes are spread by 2 scale degrees. If we just keep on adding 2 scale degrees, we now have a simple triad. We can add even more, so we have now a 7th. Maybe let's move this up an octave. And also I wanted to change the velocity because it's quite aggressive sounding. So we can extend this little bar towards the bottom and move it up. And now you see there's a velocity slider. We can select all of our notes and drag it down. As you can hear, the notes get quieter. So let's settle around here. We could edit all of the notes separately. So for instance, just selecting these 2. And then our chord is going to have different velocities on different notes. But also I wanted to show you quantizing, and it's especially useful with recording. So let's say we want to arm this track and we have the MIDI computer keyboard selected. Let's just record a C7 chord. So let's turn on the metronome and I'm going to record some random notes. And I obviously didn't play correctly in time. So let's double click and maybe let's change the grid to quarter notes. Maybe let's move the start marker over here. We can also change the 1 to be over here. You can just right click on the start marker and go to set 1.1.1 here. But now, as you can see, the C1 note starts before the clip, so it won't play. And to fix that, we can just click on this note and go to quantization. It's really simple. You can either just click Ctrl or Command and U, or let me go back. You just go to right click, quantize, and it just moves the start point to the grid. Now, there are some more quantization options that I wanted to show you. So you can also choose to quantize differently. If we right click and go to quantize settings, it opens up right here. We can always go back, and you can also quantize to the end. So if we now quantize this note, right click, quantize, and also quantize the end to the grid, we can do the same thing by just selecting a note and going to transform. Now you can see it's perfectly here on the grid. You can also choose the amount of quantization. If we select a note, for instance, we want to quantize just 50%, you can see it moves in real time. If you disable this auto button, it won't move in real time. You're gonna have to click transform. But with auto, it moves in real time. You can also choose not to quantize to the grid, but to different timing over here, and maybe even enable triplets. But that's the bulk of quantizing. If we quantize this note, we can hear that it now all plays on the grid. And for instance, if we wanted this to be shorter, we can just bulk edit like this. And maybe also we can just split this clip right here with Ctrl or Command and E, delete this part and only loop this section. So I'm just going to select it, Ctrl and L or Command and L, and we are just left with this nice trimmed clip. What I also wanted to show you is how a drum rack works with the piano roll. So let me just take some kit. Maybe let's take like a 707 Roland kit. So what we have is just a few classic Roland sounds. So if we now create a new MIDI clip, you can see that the names of notes are nicely substituted with the names of our samples. if you rename a slot in the drum rack, for example, BD, and we go back to the clip, it just changes the name. So let's just make a very basic pattern. Maybe I'm just going to stick to quarter notes for now. Let's add a 4 to the floor bass drum pattern. Let's disable the metronome. I'm just going to add a snare, every other kick drum. And maybe we can switch to 16th notes and add hi-hats. Just going to drag over the entire clip. Maybe let's pull the velocity of these down, and maybe every offbeat position we can go to an open hat. And we can also duplicate this part, delete the rest. Sounds like this now. Very, very simple. A cool thing you can do is now to randomize the velocities. So we can select, for instance, the hi-hats, increase randomization over here. So it's now going to play sort of a bit more humanized. And we can also bulk edit the velocities, just drag them down, for instance. Maybe let's just go down with the tempo slightly. Okay, and I wanted to show you a really cool option, which is Groove in Ableton. So you can just go to the Grooves tab and you can choose any of these grooves. We have 16th note hi-hats, so let's stick with 16th notes. Let's pick a groove like this. And if we now take a look at our clip and we go to the groove section, you can just select this new groove and let's hear it again. And I think that's quite a difference from this. Let's see the difference visually. I'm just going to loop this area and zoom in, and let me just apply this groove to this section. So you can see that the hats shift to the right. Let's go back and loop the entire thing. You can also change the amount of your groove. So maybe let's just stick to 50%. Or maybe if we were to just make it subtle, add a bit of randomness, a bit of random velocity, then we can also apply it. And we've already humanized our drums a little bit. So many different genres use swing, especially of course in house. Adding swing to hi-hats is really crucial. Now the last thing I wanted to show you today are shortcuts for changing the grid size. And I used this so often that I really wanted to include this in this tutorial. So it's basically Control or Command, depending if you're on Windows or Mac, and 1 or 2. So I'm just clicking Control and 1 to make the grid narrower, and I'm just clicking Control and 2 to make the grid wider. So it's really useful for drawing in different lengths. If we wanted to make like a stutter somewhere around here, for example, let's add a sort of flam to every second snare. Really simple. So if you now want to add lots of shorter notes, you can do that. If you want to add like a long note, you can also do that. And you don't have to every time just click and change the grid manually like this. Shortcuts, Control 1 and 2 or Command 1 and 2. This is also really useful. All right, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure to check out our Music Production Academy with start to finish courses on making tracks in various genres. And if you'd like to learn Ableton 12 with all the foundations of music production, check out the Beginner to Advanced Live 12 Start to Finish course. Make sure to also check out the Everything Bundle Collector's Edition, which includes all of the courses, sound packs and project files in our store. And to see all of that, check the video description. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. If you enjoyed this video, leave it a like, write us a comment, and I will see you in the next ones.